Welcome, John Dowling, to the Heave podcast. Welcome, John.
Yeah, glad to be here, Alex.
So you first came on my radar, I think it was from a LinkedIn post. There's so many people that I deal with or that they don't really have strong opinions. Like there's so much of recycled opinions in the industry. And I remember I saw someone posting about Caterpillar wanting to hire 40,000 technicians. It's just like the same recycled stuff over and over again. And we put something out with our thoughts from Heave as to why we think this remains the problem. And I think, if I remember correctly, you came out firing, and it really caught my attention because it was like a very educated opinion. And it wasn't something that I hear every day. And I was like, we got to get John on the podcast.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I still get people like liking that post and like commenting on it. It's like the LinkedIn post that never dies. And I think it's right what you're saying. It resonates that, the issue with technicians, it's kind of what it's about. I think Caterpillar wanted to like they were pushing their dealers hire like another 40,000 technicians. And everybody struggles. And I remember when I got out of the Marine Corps in '98, I went to work for an industrial John Deere dealership. And so this is 1998. And they're saying, we can't find technicians. We need more technicians. They're not enough. And they were like, and this is '98. So they were so excited to have me, being a young guy that wanted to be a technician. And there was like, probably a good 10 to 20 year gap between my age and the next person who was a technician. And, I remember having a conversation about with my dad, and he was like, "Hey, did you make any friends at work? How's it going?" And I was like, "No, it's like going to work with my dad every day. Like there's nobody my age, in this field." But I remember everybody was saying, we can't find technicians. And every level of my career, and it's been, we can't find technicians. But for the most part, there's some manufacturers and some dealers that are doing some really cool stuff. But still, overall, we're all sitting around. And I've had these conversations at high levels and mid levels and large dealerships, over like the last 30 years. And it's just like, we can't find technicians. But they don't change. They don't value the technician. They don't, it's just, this is my point, that when I say they don't value the technician, they don't understand how the technician is a revenue generating employee. Is that, and not to be too crude, but when the toilet is overflowing, the store manager or the branch manager or whoever is like, go get me a technician. You're like, what? Like he's billing out $150 to $200 an hour. Like, why on earth would you get the technician? And so that's like their mindset is, if it's a dirty job or if it's physical labor, it's go get a technician. I remember that we would set up for like a Christmas party or a company party. Oh, we need tables set up for the party. Well, go get some technicians. And you had salesmen just like sitting around. And so they're not earning commission, like they're not selling. It is like, those are your cheapest employees right now. Have them do it. Like, why are you pulling off technicians? And so it's just that whole mindset. When you posted that, man, I don't know what it was. It was like this fire just like boiled up, and I was like, I've got to say something. And so that was just like natural, just flowing of like, I've got to respond to that. So, but it seems like it's resonating with a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate it because that's how we connected. Let me first let me set the foundation, because you have an incredible wealth of experience. So before, and I'd love to get in depth with the first point you made, but let's at least, because you don't find many people that have your background. So you've been a field technician. I think you've been a shop technician first.
Yep.
You've been a technician. You've been a service manager. You've been a branch manager. You're an author. You wrote a book on service management. So let's kind of rewind and start. I guess you were in the Marines, and then you get out of the Marines and you start your career in the industry as a technician, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. Where did you start, and like what brands or dealer did you work for?
Yeah, so my first job outside of the Marines, so I was a heavy equipment technician or mechanic in the Marine Corps. And when I got out, so basically I needed a job, right? I mean, that was it. And I'm a worker, always been a worker. And so I think I was home for a couple of days. And to tell you how old I was, I got out the yellow pages and looked up like construction dealerships and just started calling one after another saying, hey, I'm a mechanic, got out of the Marine Corps looking for a job. And so my first job was with Rush Equipment Centers. They were the industrial John Deere dealership in Houston, Texas. They have been acquired by Doggett Equipment now. And so, yeah, that my first place was working for industrial John Deere dealership in Houston, Texas. And man, I loved it. I had Billy Russ he was like the shop foreman, and this guy was like a 20, 30-year veteran, and he was like probably the smartest technician I've ever met in my life. And he like literally crammed like 20 plus years of John Deere knowledge into my head in like 3.5 years. Like he just rode my butt every single day. And I owe a lot to Billy. In my book, if you read my book in my introduction, I talk about having mentors and giving back. And so Billy's one who really helped me. So, but yeah, started off with John Deere.
What was the training like back then?
You're talking about with the dealership or with the manufacturer?
Yeah, both, right?
Okay.
Because the manufacturer really does the training through the dealership.
Mm-hmm. So with the manufacturer, I kind of myself. I mean, I was begging for like, hey, send me to training. And so they wanted to make sure that I was going to stay there for a while, and before they started investing training, which is, it was like hard to get training, and it was almost like, well, you got to be here 2 or 3 years before they're going to send you to training, and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, and
Right.
So once they realized I was going to stick around, I started going to training. I really enjoyed the John Deere training. I do think they're one of the manufacturers that. At least this was back in the late 90s, that they really invested in training. It was good quality stuff, engaging, really focused on troubleshooting and also on component rebuild as well. And then the training at the dealership level was basically Billy Russ. My job was to be glued at the hip with him. And so we started doing jobs together at first, and then eventually he would like let me like kind of start a job and kind of do it. And when he saw that I was struggling, and eventually when I was starting to drown in a job, he'd kind of step in and start. And he wouldn't tell me how to fix it. He'd just ask really good questions and kind of lead me to that point. So, but yeah, I don't think the training was, I mean, it was just a different time back then. Like they didn't invest a lot in training, and you'd maybe have 1 or 2 opportunities a year to go. So
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because dealers are short-staffed and they just don't see, they're under pressure if they have a technician to be billing them every minute of every day? So it's a difficult thing to kind of come to grips with. I have to send these people off for training. Is that?
Yeah.
Or do you think there's a different?
Yeah. So what I'm referring to is back in the 90s and the early 2000s, that there's even less appreciation for technicians at that time. So they really didn't want to invest any money in anybody. But even like to answer your question of today, yeah, it's a lot of like, hey, I'm losing money because they are revenue producing employees. So you're losing all that potential revenue. But now I'm paying per diem. I'm paying for an airfare flight to somewhere. I'm paying for a hotel. So when I worked for a manufacturer, I was a field service rep, and part of my requirements were to get like all my dealerships certified, and they had to have so much training. And so if this is what I've learned in life, I probably read it in a book somewhere, but if you make things difficult for people to do, they're not going to do them. Like you can tell them to do this, do this, do this, but if it's difficult for them to do it, they're not going to do it. If you don't have to tell people to do stuff, just make it easy for them, and they're naturally going to do what's easy. And so one thing I did, it was a lot of work on my part, but I worked with our training manager, and I worked with dealerships, and I was like, hey, if I can use your facility, then what I'll do is have training here. And what I realized, if I could have the training in Texas, then for the same cost of sending one employee to into a different state, I could have them send 2 or 3 employees for the same cost. And that's one way of showing, like, you've got to show the dealership like this is an investment, and then you've got to make it easy for them. If it's hard, they're not going to do it. And I think a lot more of online classes are coming available. And so that's going to help as well. But probably the biggest thing is just losing that technician for a week. They're already shorthanded. And, believe it or not, a lot of manufacturers aren't dealer minded. And what I mean by that is they plan their training schedule around their schedule. And they're not realizing that June, July, and August don't plan training. That's when they're busiest. Do training, in like November, December, and January and February, and you'd get a lot more engagement. So I think it's a little bit of the manufacturer and the dealer. I think there has been improvement in the last 10, 20 years of realizing we need localized training. There are some manufacturers that are currently working with like tech schools and junior colleges and stuff to be able to have more access to training as well.
You mentioned something earlier that I've never heard before, and that was like, I want to say back in the day, but in the late '90s, you said there wasn't much respect for the profession as a whole. When did that change? Because that, clearly, everybody, since I started in 2004, it's always been what I was told, the corny sayings like sales sells the first machine and service sells the second. And so that was interesting to me to hear you allude to that.
Well, so it was a lot worse than that. So in the like 80s and 90s, so this is me like listening to older technicians complain that they used to pay a janitor more money than a technician because everybody was a mechanic, and I was like, what, how on earth would you pay that just blows your mind today, but there are so many people wanting to be a technician, and they needed somebody to clean. And, so at the John Deere dealership I was at, it was before Rush bought it. But they'd even make the point that, you'd have a janitor, like you pay a janitor, and I'm not putting down the career as being a janitor either. Like that's really important stuff,
Sure.
And so I think there has been an understanding, even I think in the verbiage, instead of going from mechanic to technician, we started to be called like grease monkey and things of that nature. So I think there has been an improvement, but there still needs to be there's still a lot of work to be done. I think there's two things that you can kind of look at is when the manufacturer reps show up at the dealership. Very rarely do they even go in the shop, and they always take people out to eat, like vendors. We'll just say vendors. Nobody says, "Hey, let's go.
Sure.
Let's go get the service manager. Let's go get some technicians and take them out to eat." It's always the store manager, the salesman. That like the stigma of if they're dirty and they're hot, then they're not as intelligent or smart. And it kind of goes back to, well, the salesman, dresses nice, looks nice. He must be business minded, and the technicians aren't. And it's just goes back to old avid of judging a book by its cover, instead of really investigating. And there's some really smart people who are technicians that just love it. They love fixing things. They love studying the new technology coming out. And I think we do ourselves a disservice as an industry and society to undermine them.
Did you enjoy when you were a technician? Did you enjoy the work?
I did. That wasn't necessarily my passion in life. You asked me like kind of what would I do, like what was my first job as a technician. And so really I needed a job, and I was good at turning wrenches, and I needed a job. I could make good money at it. And so it wasn't like this for me. It wasn't, this is my career field. This is what I want to do. It was like, I need a job. And so this is a way that I can make money, but I did enjoy it. Being able to troubleshoot things, to solve problems, when nobody else could fix it, I could. So that's always exciting. I remember talking to some of my friends, and they're like, man, my job sucks. I never learn anything new. I never use my brain. I just sit behind a desk all day. And I would tell them, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm reading all the time. Like I'm looking up schematics. I'm, going to school. I've got this new machine model came out. And so it's challenging. It is fulfilling. And I think like the fulfillment, I think people don't really understand. Like people struggle with like fulfillment with their career. And when you get into management, it's like a long game, right? It takes time to see results. Like some days you work 10, 15 hours a day, and you look back at the end of the day and you're like, did I get anything accomplished? Did I do anything? But the field mechanic can see that machine was broken, and now it's working. And so there is a lot of job satisfaction in that part of it, that you really get to just to see the fruit of your labor, like in instantly. Like once you fix it, it's fixed. You're like, I did that, versus working, management. It may take months or years to really see the fruit of your labor.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you is what prompted you to go into management, because that's not for everyone. And to me, when people ask me about management, it's always a struggle. When the way I kind of describe it is, you're used to being judged on what you do, and then when you go to management, you're now judged not by what you do, but by others. And a lot of people struggle with that. So what prompted you to go into service management, which also I think is, from my experience, the hardest / most difficult job within the ecosystem, because for a variety of reasons, you're always dealing with problems. You're always dealing with unhappy customers. There's very rarely a service manager that gets like, hey, a happy customer saying thank you.
Yeah. So this is going to be like super practical. I have arthritis, like really bad, and I would like eat Tylenol arthritis pills like all day long, like candy, and probably destroyed my kidneys and liver and everything. But yeah, my hands just hurt bad. And I was like, I can't do this the rest of my life. I even bought, Snap-on has pretty shiny wrenches, the highly polished wrenches. And I couldn't use them. I had to buy the industrial finished ones, the black ones, because if I got any hydraulic oil on them, like I couldn't grip them. Like they were just like slide right through my hands. It was so bad. And so a parts manager position came available at the dealership I was working at. And so I talked to the store manager about it. And this current service manager wasn't doing a great job, and he used to be a parts manager. And so then he was like, well, what about service manager? And I was like, well, Doug's the service manager. Like, that's my boss. I was like, I'm not going to take his job. I'm not going to do that. And he's like, no, I'm going to move him to parts manager. Would you be interested in that? And I was like, yeah. But I was thinking, I've got to do something different. My body, I did it for 10 years. My body hurts. I've had back surgery. I don't know if that's from the Marine Corps or from riding bulls or, being a field mechanic, but neither of those careers are great on your body. And I realized I'm not going to do this for another 10 years. I'm just hurting too bad. I don't think my body's going to be able to make it. And so, yeah, that was basically pain. I was like, I have to do something different. Told my wife, like, hey, this is a great career move. If I can move into management, like once you get experience as a manager, like you can go into different career fields and different things. And oddly enough, Alex, I took a $10,000 a year pay cut to be a service manager. Work longer hours, make less money, but at the end of the day, it paid off. When I talk with, I do recruiting now, and when I talk with technicians, like wanting to make that shift from technician to service managers, in their mind, they're thinking, hey, I'm going to get a big pay raise because I'm the manager now. And
Nope.
I tell them, no,
Nope.
You're not.
Nope.
So this was back in 2004. So $10,000 was a lot of money. Sure. And my wife was like, what are you doing, John? But I said, it'll pay off. And so it has. Yeah, I've had a great career. So basically, my hands hurt really bad.
That's something that's not really discussed in the circles that I'm in, is just the physical toll it takes. Is there like a lifespan for technicians? You're still involved with the recruiting technicians today. Yeah. Is that something that's a common theme? Is it everybody kind of who follows the NFL knows that running backs in the NFL have nobody signs contracts after the age of 30. It's like 8 to 10 years, and then is that a common theme for technicians? Just the toll it takes on your body, or has it changed? Are there advancements where it's we do things differently now? Well,
with the technology of hand tools, power operated tools and stuff, they're a lot lighter and a lot more powerful than what they were. And so the ease of the job is changing because the quality of like components, like in engines, don't fail as often. And so a lot of the repairs are with the laptop. I would probably say 75+% of like field service calls is hooking up a laptop, and it's a sensor or something like that. The quality of oil, the quality of components and materials, it's so much greater. And so rebuilding an engine isn't as common. Now you do in your larger mining operations, they're putting 10, 20, 30,000 hours on machines. I'm not saying that engines don't fail. I'm just saying for your average CE dealership. And so you see like women coming into this market, like they're seeing, hey, there is this demand for technician, and there's more and more ladies like entering in this field because you're not lifting big, heavy stuff. You have overhead cranes, about every shop has an overhead crane now. And so the career progression or lifespan as a technician does extend farther, into, say your 50s and 60s and stuff. But I think, Alex, one thing that a lot of dealerships, some of them do, very, very small percentage, is they don't have a succession plan for technicians. And I think we could be more productive and profitable if we better value that older technician, the mature technician, because they'll have 30 or 40 years experience in their head, but their body can't work anymore. Like they can't hit the times anymore. They're just tired. And, I hate to say it, a lot of dealerships would put those guys out to pasture, or like increase pressure on them, or try to figure something else out. But really what successful tech dealerships do or should do, and so we're talking about Ron and I were having this conversation, I think last week, is that if you could get that technician who's in his 50s, his body's starting to wear down, And if you could make him a shop lead or a shop foreman, and then get 4 or 5 younger guys or gals, and let him just coach them and mentor them. I mean, just think of the success and the profitability of the dealership would be. But that takes a little bit of thinking and a little bit of forethought from a dealership to go that direction.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm having more and more of these conversations with people like you. I also have technicians on the podcast as well, and a common theme among them, the really successful ones, is that when they started, they always have that person that kind of mentored them, and you did as well. And so it seems pretty common sense to me to have that set up, but there's not many dealers that do for some reason. There's not a lot of secrets here.
No. And I even mentioned in my book, like, there's nothing new in my book. I just wrote it down. This is the thing. So I just wrote a review for Walt McDonald's new book, Successful Key Account Management. And he uses a term I think I'm going to steal. I think I'll tell him I'll steal it, so I think I'll be okay. But he says you have to weaponize your product support. And so I really liked his book because when I started reading it, I was thinking this is going to be the salesy book, all about sales, but it wasn't. It was more of a holistic view, and it's like you've got to bring in product support if you're going to manage your key accounts, which is market share. Every manufacturer, I mean, you've been in the business, it's market share. The manufacturer cares about market share and market share only. Like, what are you going to do to hit those numbers? And kind of go back to you're saying, like, sales the first one, and parts. And well, if we say that, do we really believe it? And we say it, we give it lip service, but we don't believe it, because if we did, like Walt's saying, like, you need to bring in product support in those sales meetings. Like, these are our key accounts. How are we going to manage them? How are we going to take care of them? And majority of that is going to be parts and service. And so one reason I wrote the book is this is the truth. Nobody understands service, Alex. They don't get it. And as you know, you're a smart guy. When we get stressed out, we go to what we are familiar with. When we're stressed out, we go to what we know. And nobody knows service. And if you look at most leadership at most dealerships, not all, but most dealerships, their senior management is salespeople. They promote up sales. The store manager, the general manager, the VP, the COO, they all came up on the sales side. And I'm not saying salespeople don't make good managers. I'm just saying, well, I guess I am saying that because selling is not managing people. It's not the same thing. And so now you get somebody who's sales driven, has to manage people. Like you told me, you asked me a while ago, how do you make that shift from a technician to manager? That used to, I kind of held my own destiny in my hand. Now I'm relying people to do my work and to perform. And most salespeople can't make that shift. And I would say a lot of technicians can't make that shift. But parts managers and service managers, they know how to manage people. They know customer service. And so since we're not promoting up parts and service managers, nobody understands service. And that's when I wrote the book, is like, I realized, and when I was at a dealership, director of product support, I was also managing, I'd be like a fill-in GM, and I'd manage store managers while we were, backfilling that role. And I would talk to the store managers and realize they never went in the service department. They weren't asking the right questions. And it wasn't that they were bad managers. They didn't know. They didn't know what to ask. And so I came up with this thing called the service manager. Really, it's a service manager and parts manager activity report. And then came out with like a document, explained everything on there. And so it had the store managers, hey, just ask these questions. Like, this is what the answer should be. And if it's this is what you ask, and kind of spoon feeding them. And so the reason that we don't do those simple things, Alex, is nobody gets it. They know sales, and they go to service and they're thinking about turning wrenches, and they see machines apart and they're like, I have no idea what to do. And they just go away. And so that's one of the purpose of the book, was to hope that that they would understand the service process, and would not be afraid to engage that service manager. So
Yeah, you bring this up. I completely agree with you. It's been the same in my personal experience. You do see individuals from the sales side of the business getting promoted at every dealer that I've been around, and they're the ones responsible for leading the company. And yes, and it happened in my personal experience, right? I was promoted. I ran the dealership. I didn't know anything about service, and I had to learn the service business. I remember, I would see it from a P&L perspective, and then. And so I would see, okay, we have this margin in parts, we have this margin in service. And then when I started like really digging in, I'm like, wait a minute, we lose money in service. How could that be? And that was like the beginning of my education on understanding, and service is hard, right? Sales is not as hard, right? Because theoretically, I could go out today and sell a $400,000 machine, and that provides a tremendous amount to the bottom line and provides great revenue to the dealership. But service is really logistics, and it's so complex, and there's so many things that have to go right to offer excellent service. And I do agree that there's just a lack of fundamental understanding of that side of the business.
Yeah, you make a good point, because to sell $400,000 of labor, that's like probably 10 or 20 employees. Like that's a lot of moving pieces. That's a lot of paper. That's a lot of phone calls. And like you said, it could be one phone call and send an email over. They sign the PO and like you're done. And so it is more complicated. There is a lot of moving pieces, and and they don't understand. Like you mentioned before, of like the service manager job is probably the most stressful job and most difficult job. And so one of the benefits I hope my book is bringing to the industry is that senior management, mid-level, whatever, like store manager, they realize, and even the salesman, like I would say, some people ask me like, who should read my book? And I would say everybody in the dealership needs to read the book to understand what the service manager is going through, because then the salesman is going to be a little bit more gracious of like, holy crap, that guy has a lot or gal has a lot on their plate. Like you said, nobody's happy to see the service manager. I realized very soon as a service manager, I was like the cancer doctor. And I'm sure we all know somebody who's like died from cancer or is dealing with it. And who likes to go see that guy? Nobody. And so I realized when a customer comes to me, like, it's not good news. They don't want to see me. The machine's broken, so they're losing money, and it's going to cost them money. And I'm the guy standing in their way. And so to bear that burden every day, or that stress, and then when your salesman comes in, when's my machine going to be ready? This customer called, he's pissed off. And then the store manager comes in, and like, you just get, I explain it as a pressure cooker for 8 to 12 hours a day. You're underneath a pressure cooker constantly, and don't lose it. If you lose it and everybody's like, that guy's a maniac. Well, you be bombarded for 10 hours straight, and everybody just tell you bad news nonstop, and see how long you can deal with it. So.
Yeah, and so you've worked for multiple dealers, you've worked for OEMs, you wrote a book on service management. Is there a difference in product support at the dealers that you've worked at, who you've seen? Like, what does everyone kind of run at the same? Like, what does a really successful dealership do in product support that's different amongst their peers? Yeah,
Alex, that's a great question, man. And I'd say this: if the manufacturer's the leader, so I'm a big, I love leadership. I love to read books on leadership, and I don't know if it's like the Marine Corps or my dad. My dad's prior military as well, so it's just kind of like this. And my dad's always taught me that everything rises and falls on leadership, and so the manufacturer is the leader, right? They're the higher echelon person. And so this is what I would say. If the manufacturer who supports product support or is product support centric, so is the dealer, or more so the dealer. And what you would see, so like this product support thing is not just technicians. It's also on the manufacturer side. And I will give you, now I'm probably going to piss off some of my friends at the OEM I used to work at, but I'll give you a prime example. At the OEM that I worked at, we had this big banquet for the Salesman of the Year award, right? And so we got invited, and it was a nice, fancy event, a nice meal, and they were passing out rings. So whoever had the best market share, whoever had this, whoever had that. And so all these salesmen are getting these big gold rings, right? And big commission checks along with it. And so the director, our service director, asked me like, "Hey, John, what did you think? Do you like coming? We this is the first time ever that service people were invited to this event." And so he was proud, like he was trying to support us. Like his motives were pure, and he was trying to get us involved. And I told him, I said, it's like being the redheaded stepchild at Christmas. Like, no matter how bad you want a Christmas present, there's no way in hell you're going to get one. And like, we're just sitting here. Like, we can't win any of this stuff. We're not. And a lot of those territory sales managers got those awards by the work that we did. Like, we were the one solving the problems. We were the one like meeting with the customers, and we just sat there and was like, "Well, this is great. This is nice."
So I have a theory on this. As to why service is the redheaded stepchild. Now, I'm curious as to hear your take on it. So my theory is because service has never really been competitive. So, for example, I tell people, with what we're doing, a customer service decision is really made at the time they buy the machine. So if I buy a package of 10 CAT excavators and loaders, as a customer, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so when those machines break down, I'm going to take them to the CAT dealer. Yeah. And so that dealer has never really been threatened that, hey, when these 10 machines break, if they don't perform, I'm going to have the John Deere dealer work on them. And on the sales side, obviously, it's hyper competitive. All the dealers are fighting for that 10 machine deal, and they're lowering their price and doing this, and this. But on the service side, it's always like, hey, once we sell them, they can't go anywhere else. And that's been my theory as to why the environment of service is kind of the way it is because they've never had to fight for the business, so there's never been really any incentive to improve. Yeah. What do you think?
That is a great point. I don't necessarily think it's like services problem though. So we call it all makes business. And so when I was a service manager, that's what I did. I mean, that was like the way you buy in the customer. Like you go after the all makes business, say, hey, we'll work on anybody's tractor, anybody's piece of equipment, do a good job. And then eventually they're like, John's doing a great job for me. When I go to buy a new machine, let's go get an estimate on a new machine from him. But once again, at one dealership, I was told to stop doing that. Like the CEO's like, we're not going to do that. And so the director of service, and we're like, all like, this is sales. This is a business development activity. Like, we want them to bring us their equipment. And he was like, well, we have to buy parts aftermarket, and, we don't make as much margin on them. And then that's a lot of cash outflow because, we don't have terms. We've got to pay in 30, which is all true. Like the CEO was a super smart guy. And now being on the executive level and learning how to manage a dealership from a P&L level, I get it. Like, everything he said was true. But it's an investment. Like, are you not going to, like, when you pay advertisement, do you say, hey, where's my ROI? And, I guess we do, but like, there's not a sell, you're not getting money back. And so you're right that And I would add this to it as well, Alex, is that the issue is we as service guys or technicians, we're not salesmen. We're not natural salesmen. And so the VP of sales who's trying to drive his commission check is selling the CEO, right? This is what I personally ran into. Like he's selling his agenda to make money. That's great. Like you want a salesman to be focused like that. And so he's selling. I'm not a sales guy. I'm just a black and white guy. But the CEO is getting sold over here by a professional salesman, and I'm getting my ass kicked because I can't push my agenda. And I'm saying, hey, I'm going to make you more money, like more profit. Like this is what we need to do, and we're going to grow market share. But I'm not a sales guy. I'm not. And most technicians, most service managers are blunt, to the point, not polished, and we're just doing ourselves a disservice. And I'm not saying I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying that's just the reality, is that we've got to be able, like you're saying, we have to be aggressive. We need to stand up for the service side and be able to push that agenda. But I mean, even in corporate politics, it's about who's the best salesman. It's not I hate to say it, but it's not always the best idea that wins.
Yeah, that's a shame. It's an interesting dynamic, because what you're describing too is that everybody is siloed. Really, they're really focused on their own department. And I think in the earlier part of our conversation, you were talking about how service is a long-term investment, and it couldn't be more true than what you're describing. If you're fixing the different brands, you're proving to that customer, hey, we can support you on anything that you run. And so, it doesn't help you right now necessarily, but the next time that they buy equipment, it will help you. But that's down the road. Right? So it's interesting how those politics, aren't in the best interest of the customer either.
Yeah, I'm not here to beat up on sales guy. I'm like you said, you came up on the sales side, but
Sure.
The mindset of the salespeople is how much money can I stick in my pocket? Like the whole agenda is like, how much money can I make for myself? And what I've learned from service guys is that we're not driven by money as much, if that makes sense. And so this is, so we're talking about technician problems and stuff. This is a part of the problem, is that for service people, job satisfaction, like being the hero, fixing the equipment, really drives us, right? So for us, compensation is about 40 to 60% the problem. And this kind of gets to the root of the problem, kind of going back to my post as well. Sales guy just want to make money. Like whatever they got to do, I'm going to make money. Whatever money I made, it's not enough. I always got to make more, and they're going to do it. Service guys are like, okay, this is how much money I need. I'm comfortable, but I really don't have a lot of job satisfaction. Like I'm really pissed off. I'm upset about this, and so this is like real life, right? So we're sitting on 5-gallon buckets next to the roach coach. I guess they're called gourmet food trucks nowadays, but they were roach coaches when I was coming up. And you may or may not have a real roach in your taco, whatever you got. But we would sit around, and I noticed this, that everybody was complaining how they hated their job, they hate working there, they don't like the store, the serve, whatever. And then the guy got a raise. And that's kind of what it led up to. I need a raise. I need to make more money. And so he got a raise. And so for 3 months, this is the best place to work. Everything's awesome. I love it here. Then he became accustomed to that new lifestyle of the new compensation. And he wasn't happy anymore. And so what I think we're lazy, like management is lazy. And so instead of investigating and saying, why is that technician unhappy? Why does a technician jump for $1 an hour to go to work for somebody else? And it's not the compensation. It's, am I being respected? Am I a part of the team? Am I the redheaded stepchild, or do I have a voice at the table? And so what happens is the dealership, the store manager, once again, doesn't understand service, doesn't want to get involved. They're like, well, just give them another raise. Give them another raise. And eventually these technicians, what we could refer to as golden handcuffs, they're making so much money, they can't leave. Nobody's going to pay them the money. And now you get a technician who hates his job, who hates the dealership, hates everybody, but he can't leave. And he just despises that. Like he is stuck. And the management doesn't like him because they're like, man, we're paying this guy stupid money. Like, what's his problem? And it's not about the money. And they keep paying him money. And so now you get this bad apple that you bring in these new technicians, and he corrupts them. He corrupts everybody. And this is what's really scary, Alex. He's your field guy, and he's going out to your customer, and he's bad-mouthing your product. He's bad-mouthing the manufacturer, and he's just upset, and he doesn't know why. And they just keep throwing money at him instead of saying, like, what's wrong? And find out exactly what his complaints are. But it's just easy to throw money at the problem and move on. And I think that's a part of the issues that we have with technician retention and also recruitment.
Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to ask you, I think you've kind of started the outline towards it, is, why are customers generally unhappy with the state of heavy equipment service? It seems like your opinion is that it's institutional. It's the way that the legacy dealer infrastructure is set up. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think you could say that. The industry has the mindset of customer comes to me, like the customer engages the dealership, and in this world of technology, especially like with Amazon, I've had customers tell me this, and this has been years ago. They're like, you can't tell me when my part's going to show up. He goes, I've had a customer say, he's like, I can order a part on my phone, and I can tell you exactly when it's going to be there. But we're behind the technology power curve, but it is, a very, we're turned in on ourselves. And I think we're starting to be more customer centric, but we're like turned in on ourselves of saying, well, the customer needs to come to us. And so I did some training when I was a director of product support, and kind of talking about, we're talking about people saying this is how we've always done it. And so I was trying to help give the managers like an idea of what is best in class customer service, and kind of really, because they're like, hey, I fixed his tractor. Okay, well, it's, we really don't sell, we're not selling fixing, we're selling customer service is what we're selling. And so this is what I told them. I said, if your rationale, the way that you make a decision, either I do A or B, is A is a lot easier for me to do, then that's probably wrong. That's not best in class customer service. If you're doing something that makes your job easier, that's not showing empathy for the customer. You're just being lazy. And so that's the mindset within service, within parts, is we have this, like, what's easy for the employee. My wife just had my son, so proud of my son. He is like going around my neighborhood asking everybody if he can mow their grass, and he's making some really good money. But he's using my mower. My belt broke, and so I told him, like, you're gonna have to pay for this belt. And so I sent my wife to go get the belt, and she's like, the parts guy was like so put out, like was upset, like he had to sell me a belt, and that's the mindset with product support, with parts, and with service, is that we're not customer centric. And I think that comes from the overarching leadership of that dealership, is that we ought to be glad, like, a customer came in to buy parts from us, and you get the guy back there just like, well, let me go get this. I would say the good parts people and the good service people, no, they always took care of the customer. Everybody else, yes, it's so hard. But I think that goes back to like leadership of we're not going to accept that. That's not appropriate behavior for my customers. Like, and that goes back to investing in training. Another way that, one reason this is, we make the mistake. We talked about sales, of promoting up salespeople, but we make the same mistake in service. We get the best technician who is an introvert, who doesn't want to talk to anybody, who just wants to be left alone, but he's the best technician. And so once again, we don't understand service. So if you're having any of these struggles, buy my book, right? Because you don't understand service. And so they say, well, he's the best technician, so let's make him the service manager.
Oh no.
He doesn't want to be the service manager. Like, you're going to have to fire your best employee, and because how disgraceful is it to demote them back, and so I was the best technician and I did well, but I'm not the average guy, it doesn't always work out. And so I think we're putting the wrong people in the wrong places. And I think it goes back to training. It goes back to leadership. And so, like I said, I also do recruiting, and so at JSA, we do a lot of, we just recruit in the heavy equipment industry. And when we pick up a service manager job, their job description of what they want is like a technician. And I'm like, he doesn't have to, this is a business management role. This is a sales role. Like, the service manager's job. And so this kind of goes back, Alex, to kind of like the customer. The service manager's job is not to repair the customer's piece of equipment. The service manager's job is to manage the process of repairing the customer's piece of equipment. Like, I could care less does it help if they've been a mechanic? Does it help if they know what an engine is and an injection pump? Yes, definitely. Yes, it does. But it's not necessary. You get a business-minded guy or gal who can read a book, who can ask good questions, but understands customer satisfaction and the sales process, they'll kill it as a service manager. And I think maybe that, like, promoting that is like, hey, this is a great career field. It is very stressful, but it is very rewarding. That, maybe we need to broaden when we do recruiting for product support managers. We need to broaden it to a larger group of employees out there that's trying to be very narrow, that they have to be, mechanically inclined to open and close work orders.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment as well. This industry to me has been very insular. It's very narrow band, not looking outside to see what maybe some kind of skills would also correlate or resonate to this industry. And then we wind up with the same type of people who don't have new ideas. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you like a big picture question, because if I was to give you a pot of money and to start a dealership, how would you build it from blank slate, clean slate? How would you build it? Would you do it differently than what a traditional dealership is set up as? Because it's clear you have unique insights as built up over decades in the industry.
I would be a virtual dealership. One of your largest cost is facility, and then so you always have to be where the construction work is, right? You've got to be, well, if you have to buy 10 acres in the Houston real estate market, like that's all your money's right there. But you could get outside of Houston and get a warehouse or something. So what I would do a virtual dealership. Your salesmen don't need to be in the office. I wouldn't build a big towering, golden dealership, just plain Jane. Salesmen need to be on the road. Like, I don't want to see salespeople. They need to be in front of customers. I would be more field service centric. I would have, have resident field technicians that live throughout the whole territory. I don't want to see field technicians. And I, as a director of product support, I would tell my service managers this: I don't want to see field trucks parked in our parking lot. I'm not making any money. Well, they're working in the shop. Yeah, I'm taking a $25 an hour hickey because I can get another $25 an hour or more when they're in the field. I don't want to see them. Those trucks have wheels on them for a reason, kind of like get them out of here. And so I would have all that field based, I didn't agree with COVID, and I don't know where everybody stands on that. But one benefit that COVID came out of it is Zoom, is the virtual workplace. And so, I don't need to see people. With the technology we have, you can track them. You know exactly where they're at. So I would do that, virtually. Same thing with parts. I would be more technology heavy. And so, just like at Heave, you'll have this awesome app, to schedule technicians. One of the biggest issues with managing field service, and I was talking with the dealership the other day that they're struggling to make money at field service. And you're like, how do you struggle at making money at field service? Like, that's a gravy train. But they're trying to manage it, in a shop setting, do an app, a scheduling app, and have the customer just say, this is when I need service. And you can automate that whole scheduling process, and you're saving payroll, right? That's one less employee you need to take in calls and emails and call people, and same thing with parts. People buy parts on Amazon every day. And so I would have an app that you could schedule your service. You could schedule a sales process, a sales visit, and also parts, and just ship parts. And you could set up just like Amazon. You can have drop ship parts areas throughout your territory, and just say, hey, go pick up your part tomorrow at noon. And if they want to come in the dealership, yes, you can. You're more than welcome. We'll have a nice dealership, but it's not going to be a Taj Mahal. And just be a virtual dealership. You see this with Voom and Carvana. They've taken the car market dealership in there. It's the way of the future. Nobody wants to drive to a dealership. Nobody wants to go anywhere, and we shouldn't have to with the technology we have.
I think I know how you'll respond to this, but naturally my question then becomes, why do existing dealers struggle so much with implementing technology? Because really your answer is, use technology to your benefit, right? Mm-hmm. It'll make things easier for your customer. It'll help you manage your business much better, which will benefit the customer. So why do dealers struggle so much with implementing technology?
They're lazy. That's it. Just lazy, because it takes work. They're going to have to do some research. They're going to have to figure out how to implement it. It is, and they're just fat and happy. And so when I was with I'm trying not to mention too many brand names or anything, because I don't want to upset anybody or get anybody, But I'll say this: when I was with the manufacturer, and I would go around to dealers, and this was a lot of their dealers' mindsets I don't want to get ahead of myself. So this is a dealer mindset, is that at the end of the day, they would reach down in their pocket at the end of the year and pull out this wad of money and go, I can buy a new truck. I can buy a new boat. I can pay for my deer lease. I can take my wife to Hawaii. Like, life is good. And each year that pot of money gets a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller, but they can still do those things, and they're losing millions of dollars, and they don't even realize it. And so that's why you see with the manufacturers, I think really started with Cat and like Deere, and then CNHI, and now even with Kubota, they're forcing these larger dealer complexes to gobble up these mom and pop dealerships, because they realize we need business minded people. that aren't going to base their decision off of, do I really feel like doing that or not? They're going to say, we need to make more money. What's the best way to do it? So anyways, that's my thought. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, yeah, that was going to be my next question was having experience with OEMs. I would imagine that has to be a point of contention between the OEM and the dealer network, because ultimately it looks poorly on the OEM if their dealers aren't, pushing for technology and trying to make the customer experience better.
Yeah, that it does. The dealer network is a representation of that manufacturer. And so as you've noticed, like they're to be certified, like they ratchet up the requirements to be a dealer like every year. And so even I give kudos out to the manufacturer, especially for like the shop requirements is like, if you're going to sell an X product, your shop doors have to be this big. Your dealership has to be this big. They're coming out with a light requirement, or a lot of them already have it. When I was a rep, I had a light meter, and I'd walk in their shop and would say, would check the lumens and like, hey, you have to be a certain lumen. And these are like basic things, just total rabbit trail here. But I've read studies that said the cleaner a workplace is and the brighter a workplace is, your employees are more productive and also will make more ethical decisions based off the light. And so like you're saying, like we're behind the power curve. You know how easy it is to increase your technician recovery rate? Hire a porter, buy some LED lights, and you probably increase your recovery 5 to 10%. And there's like nothing you're doing. It's just naturally people step up to the challenge or to their environment. But these are like simple business practices that study I read, it was probably 10, 15 years old, Alex. And it's like, why is it a struggle to say, build a nice shop? And so let me this is an awesome story. I wanted to share this with you. So I was talking to a client last week. We're going to pick up a GM search for him. And so, being the sales guy, right? I'm learning to be a sales guy. And so we got the one job and I'm asking him, hey, do you have any other positions you're struggling? The sales pitch thing. And I said, and I guess you struggle with technicians like every other dealership, right? And he goes, no. And I was like, what? What do you mean no? Everybody needs these technicians. And this is what he said. We have an AC shop. And so you come back to job satisfaction. You want to work in 100-degree weather, or do you want to work in, let's say, 80, 85-degree weather? That's a game changer. I don't know if anybody's ever worked out in the heat. Like, it sucks the life out of you. So I'm not saying everybody can afford to have an AC shop or everybody should, but this guy has AC shop and he's fully staffed. So, did I answer your question? I kind of went on off a rabbit trail, and
I wanted to go. The next thing was kind of where we started was the labor shortage. And you have a unique perspective because of your background, and also because you're a recruiter for the industry today. It hasn't really changed. I laugh when I read these articles that get put out where it's like the CAT mandate to their dealers. Like they're not trying to hire. Of course, they want more technicians. But one of my pet peeves is when people talk about things and there's no action behind it, or we pretend. We never really discuss the root cause of something. And so, like, the things that we've been trying to bring more into the forefront with our conversations, with our social media content is, number one, the economics have been backwards for a long time. Technicians, to me, have been grossly underpaid for the work that they do and the value they provide. And I appreciate your perspective. You've talked a lot, not necessarily just about economics, but just respect, overall respect job conditions, like leadership and management, everything. And I do think it's a multi-pronged issue.
Yeah.
So I would just love to hear, why you think it hasn't changed in decades, and why we still are dealing with the same thing.
This question is much bigger than our industry. This is the culture of the U.S. that we have. We do not honor or respect the trades. If you go to Europe, there's like an internship program, and you have a journeyman process. You go to Canada. So we did a search for a manufacturer in Canada, and so they had a test site in the U.S. and they wanted a technician, and they were saying like they wanted a bachelor's degree and they wanted like this certification. And we were like, well, this is the U.S. And if you got some tools, you get a job as a technician. Like there's not like a certification process. And they were like, what? Like you just let people like fix stuff? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of the way it goes. And then we also do recruiting in Latin America, and a lot of their technicians, they have in mechanical engineering degrees, and some of them have master's degrees. But in the U.S., they have a high school diploma or a certificate. And I'm not saying we need to make it harder to be a technician, but I'm just saying look at the value that they value on the trades, that they're, in one nation, it's like a 4-year degree. It's like a lawyer. I mean, would we let a lawyer practice law without a doctorate's degree? Would you let a doctor be And to me, I think that's what we're showing, like our low value. Now I'm not saying we need to say you got to have a master's degree. We need to make it harder and harder. We need technicians, but there is a value there. When people see that perceived value of you've got to work for this, like you've got to go to a 2-year school to get an associate's degree or something. And there's a lot of dealerships that do that now. They sponsor a school. A lot of manufacturers have different programs with different trade schools. And so there is some work being done to that. But this issue of, let me tell you this story. This is a great story. So I had a mutual friend, and so the guy, he played college football. He played professional, came back to this our local town, and has a very successful real estate company and commercial property management company. And so he was working with a university, and they had developed this alternative campus. And so he was on their advisory board. So one of the mutual connections, like, hey, you've got to meet this guy. Like y'all, both of y'all think alike. Like you need to, talking about the trade skills and stuff. And so I was talking with him. So he gave me his spiel, what all these PhDs and all these big business owners and everybody were trying to develop this campus. And so I said, well, let me get it straight. So basically the counselor, it's counseling these students. And if they can't get into the main university, so basically if they're too stupid to get into the main university, then what about one of our sister colleges? And if they're too stupid to get in their sister colleges, what about this junior college? And then if they're too stupid to get in their junior college, they go, are you good with your hands? Do you want to be a plumber or electrician or something? And he's like, that's exactly right. He goes, that's their mindset. And so he's like, but I want to change it. He goes, so he made a good point to him. He's like, we have lied to the American people. So he's talking, this is like one of the biggest universities in the United States. And he's talking to him. He's like, if we're telling people that you get a 4-year degree to make more money, he goes, that's a lie. He goes, I can hire project managers all day long with 4-year degrees and pay them $50,000, $60,000 a year. HVAC mechanics, I'm paying $80,000+ a year, and I can't get enough of them. So really, what career field? But I think this goes back, Alex, to what you're saying. Even at the dealership, like product support people, the trade people, we're black and white people. We don't do a good job selling our trade. We don't, and so the university, it's a money base. It's all about the money. And I'm pro education. I went to school later in life. Love education, but if you're getting an education to make more money, that's the wrong motive. If you want to, better yourself and learn, then yes, go do it. But if you're doing it just for money, you can make six figures as a plumber, like with no student loan debt. And so the universities do a good job of selling the white collar career path, and they're selling that piece of paper. We, as product support people, and I was on the advisory board for a tech college here in Texas, like we just don't do a good job. We don't do a good job promoting it in the high schools. We don't do a good job promoting it in the business sector of like, this is a good thing. And so, maybe that's my calling in life now, is like just being the voice of saying, hey, this is a great career. Like you can make good money, great fulfillment. And so I know I've gone long, but really to answer your question is we've got to change the perspective in the United States of America that working with your hands is not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. It's a natural thing. Anyways, I could keep going on and on, but we've got to change it.
I think the fulfillment piece is a really good angle too, because I think it's true. How many people are working office jobs where they're doing Excel spreadsheet after Excel spreadsheet and there's no chance of fulfillment? But that's something that's not really discussed often.
Yeah. Personal example, I spend my life behind a computer now, it seems like. And, you talk about Excel. I love Excel. But after a day or so of like analyzing data, like I am dumbed down. I'm completely exhausted. I can't see what I've accomplished. But I've got a nice little place in the country, but give me my weed eater and my mower, and I manicure my lawn. I sit back and have a beer and go, wow, now that looks nice. Like I've got this energy, this drive. Like, man, that looks really good. I don't get the same feeling after looking at data all day long, just sitting in a cubicle saying, what am I doing? So, now we need people to analyze data. So I'm not saying I think it's just different. People are different, and it's okay to be different. We need to just realize everybody's different. There's not one pigeonholed career path. I'll say it. I like to make this statement, Alex, is I am guilty. Right? I'm guilty. So I tell my kids, so I was a mechanic. I go around, I talk to people, hey, we need to honor the trades, and it's a great career. I tell everybody else, your kids need to be a mechanic. And then I'm teaching my kids, and so I'm just going to confess to myself. I've taught this to my kids. I've told them, I said, kids, there are two types of people in life. There are people who get told what to do, and there's people who tell people what to do. Like, who do you want to be? So, like, let's learn how to work. Let's get an education. And I realize I'm a stinking hypocrite. But I was raised in the same culture. Like, it's still in, like, if I'm not careful, it's in my brain, it's in my DNA of, if you're the CEO or VP or you have a big fancy title and a desk, like, you are successful versus the mechanic, And so now I'm like thinking, that's not right. And so I told you about Johnny, my son, who's mowing everybody's lawn. And so I was showing him how to replace the belt. And I told him, I said, Jonathan, I said, if you learn how to work on this mower, I said, all of our neighbors, they can't work on their mowers. I said, they're paying somebody else a lot of money to like $150 an hour to work on their mower and probably $200 to come pick it up. I said, if you learn how to change the oil and the blades, I was like, you could charge them a couple $100 for like 20 minutes worth of work. And like this light bulb goes off in his head. And I'm like, that's the truth. Like, I need to teach my son, yes, to be a leader, and yes, to do great things. But that is a great thing, to be able to serve your neighbors.
Well, really, what you're describing is that he would become indispensable, and that's the key learning, right? Is everyone wants to pursue a career, but the key is, are you indispensable? Do you have value? And I think that the story, we need to do a much better story of, or telling the story of, these jobs have value, because there's a decreasing supply, and you become indispensable. There's no shortage of construction. There's not going to be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And these positions will become more needed, even more so than today. And that is the missing, I think, message.
Yeah. To your point, I never sold my tools. I got well over $10,000 of tools sitting in my garage, rusting away. But in my mind, like I told my wife, 20 years ago, I was like, if the economy goes south, I can always get a job as a mechanic. And so I've got those tools because, like you said, if I can't find something to do, bring me your tractor, bring me your truck. I'll work on it. I can always make money, no matter what happens. If there's a zombie apocalypse, I can still make money. It won't be by recruiting and writing books, but and I think that is a thing of being just having that freedom or independence to be able to do whatever you need to make money. So, good point, Alex.
Well, I know that one book that I don't have on my list, but I will be buying and reading, is your book. So can you tell us what's the name of your book and where can we find it?
Yeah, so it's called Service by the Boxes. It's available on Amazon. You literally can just Google Service by the Boxes, John Dowling, and it should be one of the first things that pops up on your search engine. So it just breaks down service to the simplest step as possible. I graphed out service years ago. I read a book. I can't even remember. I've searched like so many business books trying to find where I read this, but it basically stated, the author was saying, if you can't write out your process, you don't know it. And so when I got hired as a director of product support, we just built a brand new facility, multi-million dollars, and we had this fancy training center. And we had like 2 8-foot dry erase boards. And I basically flow charted the whole service process, like all the way through. So like 16 foot of service. And so I got our executive assistant. I said, take a picture of that and put it in Excel for me. And so then I flow charted in Excel and kept working with it. And I showed it to Chris, the owner, and the other executive. And he's like, it's too complicated. It's too complicated. And so basically I just kept breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down to make it simpler and simpler. And then I created, I called it the work order timeline audit. And so this is really good. This is really interesting stuff where I'll start kind of geeking out on you, is that most service managers, if you ask them like, what is your number one problem in closing out a work order or decreasing your aged work orders, and they'll say this: I need more technicians or better technicians, and I need parts. If I could get parts and I could get more technicians, and me being a service manager, right? I realize that is total BS. That is not the problem. Sometimes, but majority of the time, no. And so
everyone always wants to tell you the one in a million scenario.
Yes.
But no, look at this. There's this one job, and the part, there's not a single part in the U.S. That's only one instance. That doesn't apply to the 35 other work orders that you haven't closed.
Yeah, and so it's like simple, right? Your average closure rate is 15 days. It takes 3 days to get the parts, right? What did you do for those other 12 days? And so I like data. So like I said, I like Excel, and I like to be able to say, hey, here's the data. Like, I'm not making this crap up. Like, here it is. And so when I wanted to audit the work order process, I realized there had to be like triggers to get like from one step to the next step to the next step. And so I figured out what those triggers were. And the first thing was the inbox. That's where it starts. Like you you go to the customer brings a piece of equipment in, you fill out your check-in sheet or whatever, and you put it in the inbox. And then I got to the next step of the work order, and I couldn't figure out what to call it. And I was like, well, we have the inbox. Now it's the tech box. So that's how I came up with service by the boxes. I couldn't come up with anything more creative than that. And so anyways, I just broke it down to each of those 10 steps. I realized there's 10 steps. And so in my work order audit, I could tell the service manager how many days or hours it took them to get to each step. And you want to know what were the two largest steps that added the most time to the work order process?
What?
So first one is the inbox. It would take them 2 to 3 days just to open up a work order. Like the total customer experience could be trimmed off by 3 days by opening the work order the same day. And they said, well, that doesn't make sense. I said, well, can you assign it to a technician if the work order's not open? No. Can you order parts? No. You've got to do that. And so at the end of each chapter, there's like a little keys to success. So in the inbox, it's like open up the work order the same day. It's like that simple. Open up the work order the same day the machine shows up, and you're cut 3 days off the process. The other one was just closing the work order. Like the technician submitted their write-up, everything there. Like all they have to do is close it. And they would wait 5 days or so just to close the work order because they're not business minded. And so I'm sure you know this to be true. The service manager closes out the work orders the last week of the month.
Yep.
And it's
last 3 days.
Last 3 days. They're staying till midnight, just going away. And so, being a executive and managing from the P&L side of saying, holy crap, that's cash flow. That's like hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're pulling on this line of credit over here, paying interest on, right? And we have the cash right here. Like, why am I paying interest to the bank? I have my own bank. And so basically I could show the data and say, look, your issue is your processes. Yes, you're always going to struggle with technicians. You're always going to struggle with parts, but it's processes. If you know it's going to take you 3 days to get parts ordered in, why don't we have a process of troubleshooting that piece of equipment, estimating it, getting it estimated and ordered instead of waiting? And so a lot of dealerships, man, Alex, they still do this, like talking about doing things like in the 1950s, first in, first out. So they're repairing the piece of equipment and the customer's machine is sitting there for 2 weeks. And then they bring it in, they troubleshoot it, and they call the customer and said, you need this hose or whatever. Oh, it's on back order for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. The customer says, well, you've had my machine for 2 weeks. Yeah, but I told you that we were 2 weeks behind. And the customer's like, well, couldn't you just have looked at it and said it's the hose and ordered the hose? And even if it was back ordered, by the time you could work on it, you would already have it. And it's like silence, like crickets, right? And so basically it's just like best in class. Like this is the way service works. It's not complicated. I guarantee that you read the book, you apply just 1 or 2 principles in the book to any service department, it will make a major difference,
Yeah, I look forward to reading it. I think it'll be helpful for our team too at Heave because we've been bringing in individuals who are not from the industry, and so I think it'll be helpful to help them understand too, like what makes excellent product support, but also where our competition maybe has how they've thought about things too.
Yeah, well, awesome.
So I look forward to it. It's and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you here as we progress because I think you have a really unique perspective and selfishly might be able to help me chart out the course for a more successful product as we go forward. Yeah,
I'd love to. My dad always says I have the gift of gab, so I like to help. You asked me about being a technician. That wasn't really my passion. Like I was good at it, and people have asked me, personal business coaches and stuff, like what do you want to do and stuff. And, I've always struggled. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, and that, like, this was like, say 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And what I've realized is, I just want to make a difference. I just want to have impact. So, with that said, Alex, I'm here to help. I think we could really make an impact on product support. And it's a great career. You make good money, a lot of job satisfaction, and we just got to get the word out. Like, hey, this isn't a bad word to be a technician, or be a service manager or a parts manager. So it's a really, really fun job.
Well, thanks, John Dowling, for your time and coming on and having a conversation with us. Appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Alex.